Ever bought sweet potato slips online, only to pay $20 or $25 for a dozen tiny plants that may or may not survive shipping? Or maybe you have tried the old toothpick and water glass method and waited for weeks with nothing to show for it. Here is the thing. You can take one single sweet potato from the grocery store and turn it into dozens, sometimes even hundreds of slips. And when you factor in that each slip can produce several pounds of sweet potatoes, we are talking about the potential for hundreds of pounds of food from one potato that cost you $1 or $2. In this video, I am going to walk you through the complete process from start to finish. Plus, stick around to the end, where I will show you how to properly cure and store your harvest so your sweet potatoes last for months. Let us get into it. Sweet potatoes are hands down one of the most rewarding crops you can grow in your home garden. They are incredibly productive, surprisingly easy to care for, and they store like a dream when handled correctly. The best part is that once you learn how to grow your own slips, you never have to buy them again. You become completely self-sufficient with this crop, and that is exactly what I am going to teach you today. So let us start by understanding exactly what we are working with here. Now, before we dive into the how-to, I want to make sure you understand what sweet potatoes actually are, because this knowledge is going to help everything else make sense. Contrary to what a lot of people think, sweet potatoes are not actually potatoes at all. Regular potatoes are nightshades related to tomatoes and peppers. Sweet potatoes are something completely different. They are actually the tuberous root of a morning glory vine. If you have ever grown ornamental morning glories, you know exactly what family we are talking about here. Sweet potatoes grow from something called a slip, which is essentially a rooted sprout that grows off of a mature sweet potato. You take that slip, stick it in the ground, and it will root and grow into a vine. That vine then produces roots underground, and those roots swell up into the sweet potatoes you eat. It is a beautiful system once you understand it. Now here is why sweet potatoes deserve a spot in every garden. They absolutely love hot and humid weather. While your tomatoes are struggling in the dog days of August, your sweet potatoes are thriving. They can handle heavy rain without batting an eye. They are virtually impervious to most diseases that plague other garden vegetables. Pest pressure is minimal compared to almost anything else you can grow. And when you harvest them, they can store for 6 months or longer if you cure them properly, which I will show you at the end. They are one of those rare crops that practically grow themselves once established, and they reward you with an enormous harvest for very little effort. That is why I grow them every single year without fail. Let us talk about timing, because this is where a lot of gardeners make mistakes, and I will be the first to admit I have made this mistake myself. Sweet potatoes are tropical plants. They do not just dislike frost. They cannot tolerate cold at all. Now you might be thinking, okay, I will just plant them after my last frost date, like I do with tomatoes and peppers. But here is the thing. Tomatoes and peppers can handle a dip into the upper 30s or low 40s. They will not be happy about it, but they will survive. Sweet potatoes will not. They need warm soil and warm nights to thrive. You should not plant your sweet potato slips outside until nighttime temperatures are consistently in the 50s or warmer. For most gardeners, that means planting about 3 to 4 weeks after your last frost date. So how do you figure out when to start your slips? Here is the simple formula. Take your last frost date, add about 1 month, and that is your target planting date. Then count backwards 60 to 90 days from that date. And that is when you should start sprouting your sweet potatoes. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get good slips ready for planting. Let me give you a real example. If your last frost date is April 15th, you would want to plant your slips around mid-May. Counting back 90 days from mid-May puts you at mid-February for starting your slips. If you are in a warmer zone like 8 or 9, you might be planting in late April, which means starting slips in late January or early February. Cooler zones might not plant until June, giving you until March to get started. Now here is the good news if you are running behind schedule. Sweet potatoes are the root of a vine, and that vine will keep growing until frost kills it. The tubers are insulated by the soil, so even when frost hits, your sweet potatoes underground are perfectly safe. As long as you get your slips in the ground with at least 4 to 5 months of warm weather ahead, you will still get a good harvest. So do not panic if you are starting late. You have more flexibility with sweet potatoes than almost any other crop. Now let us talk about selecting the right sweet potatoes to sprout, because this makes a bigger difference than most people realize. You have a few options here. You can use sweet potatoes from the regular grocery store. You can visit an Asian market, or you can use sweet potatoes you grew and saved from a previous season. Each has its advantages. Standard grocery store sweet potatoes are the easiest to find. Those classic orange Beauregard or Jewel types are available everywhere. They will absolutely work for growing slips. However, I want to encourage you to visit a local Asian market if you have one nearby. The variety selection is incredible, and in my opinion, many of these varieties blow away the standard orange sweet potato in terms of flavor. One of my personal favorites is the Murasaki sweet potato. It has purple skin with white flesh, and the flavor is outstanding. But my absolute favorite sweet potato in the entire world is the Okinawan sweet potato, sometimes called the Hawaiian purple sweet potato. It has a tan outer skin, but when you cut it open, the flesh inside is this gorgeous Crayola crayon purple. It is one of the sweetest, most delicious sweet potatoes you will ever taste. Now these specialty sweet potatoes are generally more expensive. Okinawan sweet potatoes often run $3 a pound or more. A single potato might cost you $1.50 to $2. But here is the beautiful thing. You only need 1 or 2 potatoes because each one will produce dozens of slips over the course of the sprouting season. Compare that to buying slips online where you might pay $20 to $25 for a dozen, and you can see how much money you save by doing this yourself. One more tip on selection. If you saved sweet potatoes from your own garden last year, those are going to sprout faster and more vigorously than store-bought potatoes. Store-bought sweet potatoes are fresh, which sounds like a good thing, but fresher potatoes take longer to break dormancy and start sprouting. A sweet potato that has been stored for several months is primed and ready to grow. So if you have any from a previous harvest, definitely use those first. When choosing your potatoes, look for firm, healthy specimens without any soft spots, cracks, or signs of rot. Size matters here too. Larger sweet potatoes have more energy reserves and will produce more slips over a longer period. A big potato can keep producing slips for months, giving you wave after wave of new plants. I recommend buying at least 2 or 3 potatoes so you have backup in case one fails to sprout. Now let us set up your slip station. This is where the magic happens. The most common method you will find online involves sticking toothpicks into your sweet potato and suspending it halfway into a glass of water. While this method does work, it is slow and inconsistent. I am going to show you a superior method that produces faster results with more slips. What you need is a moisture-retaining potting mix and a container to hold everything. I use a basic compressed potting mix that I moisten until it holds together like a snowball when I squeeze it, but no water drips out. That moisture level is exactly what we want. Not soggy, just consistently damp. For the container, a simple plastic storage bin works perfectly. You can find these at any big box store for around $8 to $10. Get one that is large enough to hold several sweet potatoes laying flat with some space between them. Take your sweet potatoes and lay them horizontally in the moist potting mix, burying them about halfway. You want roughly half of each potato exposed above the mix and half buried below. The buried portion will develop roots, while the exposed portion will sprout your slips. Space them a few inches apart so each potato has room to produce slips, without crowding. Once your potatoes are nestled into the mix, place the lid on your container but leave it slightly cracked. We want to build humidity inside because sweet potatoes love warmth and moisture, but we also need some air circulation to prevent mold. Open the lid fully for a few minutes each day to let fresh air in, then close it back to a crack. Now here is the critical part. This container needs to go in a warm, sunny location. A south-facing window in a heated room works well. A sunroom is ideal if you have one. The sweet potatoes need at least 6 hours of light daily, and warmth is essential for spurring them to sprout. The sun heating up that enclosed container creates a mini greenhouse effect that really gets things moving. If you want to speed things up even more, you can place your container on a seedling heat mat set to around 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The bottom heat encourages faster root development and sprouting. This is not required, but it can shave a couple weeks off the process if you are in a hurry. With your slip station set up, now we wait and watch. In the first couple of weeks, you probably will not see much happening above the surface. Do not worry. The sweet potatoes are developing roots down into the potting mix. Keep the mix consistently moist, but not waterlogged. If it starts to dry out, add water. If it seems too wet, leave the lid cracked open a bit more to let it dry down slightly. After about 3 to 4 weeks, you should start seeing small bumps forming on your sweet potatoes. These are the beginnings of your slips. They will push up and out, developing leaves and growing several inches tall over the following weeks. Some potatoes will sprout faster than others. Remember what I mentioned earlier about older potatoes sprouting more readily than fresh ones. If you have a mix of homegrown and store-bought potatoes, you will likely see the homegrown ones take off first, while the store-bought ones lag behind. Be patient with the slower ones. They will catch up eventually. As your slips grow, make sure you are hardening them off to real sunlight. Here is something most people do not realize. Window glass blocks most of the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. So even though your slips look nice and green sitting in that sunny window, they are not actually acclimated to real outdoor sunlight. If you have the ability to open your window, do it. Let that full-spectrum sunlight hit your slips directly. If opening the window is not practical, you will need to gradually introduce your slips to outdoor conditions. Before planting, spending a few hours outside, in dappled shade at first, and working up to full sun over a week or so. By the way, if you are finding this helpful so far, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss future videos. Now let us keep going. Once your slips have grown to about 6 to 8 inches tall with several leaves and visible root nodes along the stem, they are ready to harvest and plant. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole process, because you really get to see how productive one single sweet potato can be. Let me walk you through exactly how to do this. First, you need to understand how sweet potato slips root. Remember, sweet potatoes are the root of a morning glory vine, and morning glories root along their stems at points called nodes. If you look closely at your slips, you will see these nodes where leaves branch off from the main stem. At many of these nodes, you will also see small roots or root bumps forming. These nodes are the key to multiplying your slips. To harvest your slips, you can either gently twist and pull them off the mother potato, or use a clean sharp knife or scissors to cut them. I prefer cutting because it causes less damage to both the slip and the mother potato. Cut the slip off right at the base where it meets the potato. As you remove each slip, immediately place it into a container of clean fresh water. A pint glass or mason jar works perfectly. You want to keep those roots hydrated while you work. Now here is where it gets exciting. Each slip you harvest can actually be divided into multiple individual slips. Look at your slip and identify each node that has roots or root bumps. Each of those nodes can become its own separate plant. So if you have a slip that is 8 inches tall with 4 nodes showing roots, you can potentially turn that one slip into 4 individual plants. Simply cut between the nodes, making sure each piece has at least one node with roots. Place each cutting back into your water container. I know some of you are wondering if these small cuttings will actually survive. The answer is absolutely yes. Last year, I received sweet potato slips shipped from an online seller that were nothing more than cuttings with no roots at all, just bare stems with a few leaves. I planted them directly in the ground, kept them well watered, and every single one rooted and grew into a productive plant within 2 weeks. I had 0 losses. Sweet potatoes are incredibly eager to root and grow. As long as the cutting has a node, it will root. After you harvest a batch of slips from your mother potatoes, guess what happens? The potatoes keep producing more slips. You can harvest slips every couple of weeks throughout the sprouting season. One large sweet potato can produce 50, 75, even over 100 individual slips if you keep harvesting and let it keep producing. This is why I said at the beginning that one potato can turn into hundreds of pounds of sweet potatoes. Do the math. If one potato gives you 50 slips, and each slip produces 3 to 5 pounds of sweet potatoes, that single $1 or $2 potato could yield 150 to 250 pounds of food. That is absolutely incredible productivity. Now you have 2 choices for what to do with your harvested slips. You can root them further in water for a week or 2 before planting, or you can plant them directly into the garden. Both methods work. Rooting in water first gives you more developed roots and can increase transplant success, especially if you are new to this. If you go this route, place your slips in a jar of water in a sunny window and change the water every 2 to 3 days. If the water gets murky or starts to smell, change it immediately or your cuttings could rot. After 1 to 2 weeks, you will have slips with robust root systems ready for planting. However, I prefer the direct planting method because it saves time and I have found it works just as well. The key to direct planting success is timing and consistent moisture, which brings us to actually getting these slips in the ground. Planting your sweet potato slips is straightforward, but there are a few details that make a big difference in your success rate. First, let us talk about timing your planting. The best time to plant sweet potato slips is in the evening, ideally on an overcast day or when rain is expected. You want to avoid planting in the morning or midday when the sun is intense. Those harsh rays will stress your tender slips before they have a chance to establish roots. By planting in the evening, your slips have all night to settle in and start rooting before facing their first full day of sun. For spacing, plant your slips about 12 to 18 inches apart in rows that are 3 to 4 feet apart. If you are growing in raised beds, 12 inches apart in all directions works well. Each slip needs enough room to spread its vines and develop a good root system. Closer spacing will give you more but smaller potatoes. Wider spacing produces fewer but larger tubers. I personally plant mine about 12 inches apart because I prefer getting more medium-sized potatoes rather than a few giants. Before planting, prepare your planting holes. Sweet potatoes are not heavy feeders, but they do appreciate some fertility. I add a handful of balanced organic fertilizer, something like a 5-5-5 blend, to each planting hole along with a light dusting of bone meal. The bone meal provides phosphorus, which encourages strong root development, and that is exactly what we want since we are growing a root crop. To plant each slip, create a hole deep enough to bury the stem up to the first set of leaves. You want all those root nodes along the stem buried in the soil where they can develop into roots. Gently firm the soil around each slip, making sure there are no air pockets. Do not pack it down too hard, just enough to hold the slip in place and ensure good soil contact with the stem. Immediately after planting, water your slips thoroughly. And I mean thoroughly. Soak them well. For the first week to 2 weeks, you need to keep your slips consistently moist. This is critical. They have very limited root systems and cannot handle any drought stress while establishing. Water daily if there is no rain, and water deeply. I cannot stress this enough. The number one reason sweet potato slips fail is letting them dry out in that first week or two before they establish. After about 1 to 2 weeks, you will start to see signs that your slips have established. The stems will stand upright and firm instead of wilting in the afternoon sun. You will notice new leaves beginning to form at the growing tips. The leaves will have a healthy, vibrant green color instead of looking pale or stressed. Once you see these signs, you can gradually reduce watering to once or twice a week, depending on your rainfall and soil type. Here is something that catches a lot of gardeners off guard with sweet potatoes. For the first month or so after planting, it may seem like nothing is happening. The vines grow slowly at first, and you might wonder if something is wrong. Do not worry. During this time, your sweet potatoes are focusing their energy on developing roots underground. This is exactly what you want. Once the root system is established and soil temperatures really warm up in summer, the vines will take off like crazy. By midsummer, those slow-growing slips will have transformed into sprawling vines covering several square feet each. Speaking of vines, let me give you a quick tip on managing them. Sweet potato vines can grow 10 feet long or more. As they sprawl across your garden, they will try to root at every node that touches the ground. While this sounds productive, it actually diverts energy away from your main root system and results in lots of small potatoes instead of nice large ones. I recommend gently lifting and repositioning your vines every couple of weeks to prevent them from rooting along their length. Just pick them up and move them around a bit. This keeps all that energy focused on the main plant and gives you a better harvest. For fertilizing during the growing season, sweet potatoes do not need much. Too much nitrogen will give you beautiful lush vines but small potatoes. I give mine one side dressing of balanced fertilizer about a month after planting, and that is it. Let the plants do their thing. They are remarkably self-sufficient once established. Now let us talk about some common problems you might encounter and how to solve them. Sweet potatoes are one of the most trouble-free crops you can grow, but issues do pop up occasionally. The first problem is slips that wilt and fail to establish after planting. This is almost always a watering issue. Either the slips dried out during that critical first week, or they were planted during the heat of the day and got scorched before they could root. The solution is simple. Plant in the evening, water deeply and consistently for the first 2 weeks, and consider providing temporary shade with a lightweight row cover if you are experiencing a heat wave right after planting. The second problem is slow growth or stunted plants. If your sweet potatoes are just sitting there not growing, the soil is probably too cold. Remember, these are tropical plants. They will not really take off until soil temperatures are consistently above 65 degrees Fahrenheit. If you planted a bit early and temperatures are still cool, just be patient. Once things warm up, growth will accelerate rapidly. You can also lay black plastic mulch over the bed before planting to help warm the soil faster. The third problem is yellowing leaves. If your sweet potato leaves are turning yellow, it could be a few things. Overwatering can cause yellowing, especially if your soil does not drain well. Sweet potatoes like moisture, but they do not like sitting in waterlogged soil. Nutrient deficiency can also cause yellowing, particularly nitrogen deficiency, which shows up as overall pale yellow leaves, or magnesium deficiency, which shows up as yellowing between the leaf veins. A dose of balanced fertilizer usually corrects nutrient issues. The fourth problem is voles or mice eating your tubers. This is more common than you might think, especially in gardens with mulch or lots of ground cover nearby. If you notice holes in the garden or find potatoes with chunks eaten out of them, you likely have a rodent problem. Hardware cloth laid under your beds before planting can prevent this. Or you can grow in containers, which eliminates the issue entirely. Trapping around the garden perimeter can also help reduce populations. The fifth problem is cracked or misshapen potatoes. This usually happens when the plants experience inconsistent moisture, especially a drought followed by heavy rain or watering. The potatoes grow rapidly after the dry spell and crack as they expand. Consistent watering throughout the season prevents this. A thick layer of mulch after the plants establish helps maintain even soil moisture. The sixth problem is sweet potatoes that taste bland or starchy. This is not actually a growing problem, but a storage problem. Fresh dug sweet potatoes have not yet converted their starches to sugars. They need to be cured, which I am about to show you in the bonus tip. Curing transforms the flavor completely and is absolutely essential for getting that sweet, delicious taste we all love. The good news is that if you follow the steps I have outlined in this video, you should avoid most of these issues entirely. Sweet potatoes really are one of the most forgiving crops once you understand their basic needs. Now for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. This is the step that most gardeners skip, and it makes a world of difference. I am talking about curing and storing your sweet potato harvest so they last for months and taste absolutely incredible. When you dig your sweet potatoes, they are not ready to eat right away. I know that sounds strange, but hear me out. Fresh dug sweet potatoes are starchy and bland. They have not developed their characteristic sweetness yet. The curing process is what transforms them from boring to delicious. Curing requires two things: warmth and humidity. After harvesting, brush off excess soil from your potatoes, but do not wash them. Washing removes the natural protective coating on the skin and shortens storage life. Take your unwashed potatoes and place them in a warm location with high humidity for about 10 to 14 days. The ideal conditions are 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit with 85 to 90% humidity. I know what you are thinking. Where am I supposed to find those conditions? Here's what I do. I place my sweet potatoes in a plastic storage bin, the same type I used for sprouting slips actually, and I put a damp towel in the bottom. Then I loosely cover the bin and place it in my warmest room or near a heat source. Some gardeners use a bathroom with the shower run occasionally to boost humidity. Others use a closet with a small space heater. Get creative with what you have available. During curing, the starches in your sweet potatoes convert to sugars, and a secondary skin forms over any cuts or scrapes from harvesting. This secondary skin is what allows them to store for months without rotting. After 2 weeks of curing, your sweet potatoes are ready for long-term storage. For storage, move your cured sweet potatoes to a cool, dry location. The ideal temperature is 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. A basement, root cellar, or cool closet works well. Do not refrigerate them. Temperatures below 50 degrees damage the flesh and cause the center to harden. Stored properly, your cured sweet potatoes will last 6 months or longer. I have eaten sweet potatoes from my garden in April that I harvested the previous October, and they were still perfect. So that is the complete process from start to finish. You now know how to take a single sweet potato and turn it into dozens of slips, grow those slips into productive plants, troubleshoot any problems that come up, and cure and store your harvest for months of delicious eating. This is one of those skills that pays dividends year after year. Once you have done it once, you will never buy sweet potato slips again. If you found this video helpful, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what variety of sweet potatoes you are planning to grow this year, or if you have any questions about the process. Drop them in the comments and I will do my best to answer. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.